This is the on-site interview in reference to JTA RFP number P-19-026, Local Government Affairs Services. Our first firm is the Southern Group, formerly Southern Strategy. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and introduce the committee. My name is Darren Parker. I'm the Contracts and Procurement Specialist.
I'm David Cotton. I'm the Manager of Media and Public Relations for the JTA.
Ivan Rodriguez, Director of Government and Industry Affairs.
Cleveland Ferguson, CAO.
Richard Clark, Capital Resource Officer.
And Mr. Ferguson, would you like to address them before we move on?
We are all yours
Okay.
for
Great.
the hour.
You're all set.
Great. First of all, thank you all for your time. Obviously, you've probably read through our submittal. You asked us to come in today for this interview to kind of represent just a high-level background as to who we are. As Darren mentioned, September 1, we actually had a name change from Southern Strategy Group, which you probably saw in our submittal, to now the Southern Group. And so I want to tell you just a little bit about our firm, the composition of our firm, our folks, and then our local team, and then roll into the scenario that you all presented that we'll talk about. And of course, we want to save plenty of time for Q&A. So with that, just to give you some quick background, the Southern Group was founded 20 years ago. This is our 20th anniversary this year, out of Tallahassee, Florida, by Paul Bradshaw and soon after John Thrasher. We were the first lobbying firm to expand into regional markets around the state of Florida. That being said, I joined the firm 10 years ago, opening up the Jacksonville office as part of that growth strategy, becoming the third regional office in Florida. So today we are in Miami, Tampa, Key West, Orlando, Jacksonville, Tallahassee. We're comprised of about 27 full-time lobbyists around the state of Florida. We also operate in 5 other states in the Southeast, as well as an office up in Michigan operating under a different brand. But our statewide network of 27 lobbyists, oftentimes you talk about having a network like that, but they're somewhat disconnected. That's not the case with our organization. Our 27 lobbyists, literally all 27 of us, are on weekly phone calls every Monday morning, talking about our clients, our issues, drawing off skill sets that each of our individual lobbyists can offer to an issue, regardless of where it comes from, that resource from the state. So we are a true network firm. So while we're presenting our team of 3 lobbyists that operate here in Jacksonville, as well as our supporting team members that we'll present in a minute, we do have the backing of so many resources to bear depending on the issue that we're asked to work on. With that, I just want to roll into the organization of our team. I will be your client lead, your contract manager, overseeing anything and everything that would fall under this local services contract. Quick background on me: I'm born and raised here in Jacksonville. My entire family still lives here in Jacksonville, but my background is more from the technical nature. I studied environmental science, engineering, University of Florida, came back to Jacksonville, worked in the real estate and development world for about 10 years, most of which was with the civil engineering firm England, Timms & Miller, where I managed their government affairs for about 6 years. Prior to branching out when, at the time, John Thrasher asked me to open up the Jacksonville office, which March 1 was 10 years ago. I've been very heavily engaged in the political process since probably the year 2000, 2001. I served in various appointed capacities by various governors over the last 15 years, but more importantly, even served with the local Republican Party and helping candidates get elected from the grassroots perspective to raising dollars, and obviously in the role as a lobbyist, working across aisles with both parties. Obviously, the local issues are not party affiliated. There are some that can get played against each other, but I can sit here and tell you today that our level of confidence and our relationships with the 19 members on that city council are very strong. We obviously have been very engaged in every election cycle, whether it be the mayor, city council, school board, our state representatives and House members, all the way to federal elections with our congressional members. We just find it important to have those relationships intact to offer to any of our clients when they need it. So with that, I want to introduce Matt Brockelman. Matt's one of our key team members, serving as our executive branch lead Matt's joined the firm just December 1 will be 5 years that he's been with the Southern Group. He had experience coming out of the PIO office of the city of Jacksonville, and I actually recruited him away from UNF, where he was serving in a government affairs capacity under John Delaney at the time. And obviously, since Matt's joined us, his focus is supporting all of our local clients, but he's also our representative that will travel to Tallahassee during legislative session and committee weeks, and work with probably 25 of our statewide lobbyists that convene there during the legislative session. So he will represent some of our clients with those state-based needs, but most importantly, his focus also remains here in Jacksonville on our local-based clients. Carlo Fassi just joined the firm several months back. He came off of working as a campaign manager off of 3 at-large city council races, all of which were successful. And with that, Carlo, I'd like you to just share a few words about yourself.
I joined the firm in June of this year. I have been in Jacksonville for 10 years. I moved here to attend the University of North Florida, where I actually met Matt Procurement. I come from the campaign space, having worked really grassroots in communication operations really since my time at UNF. Most recently, as Dino mentioned, I worked on 3 countywide races, 2 of which are pretty relevant. One's the current city council vice president, and the other is actually serving as the city's liaison to your board of directors, Mr. Sanubi. On this team, specifically for the JTA, I'd be serving what we're calling the regional initiative lead. I spend a lot of my time in the surrounding counties, Nassau, Clay, St. John's, Baker, and I'd be serving your interests in those counties, whether it's developing new services for your customers or expanding the services you already have available to them, like the CCT out in Clay or the Nassau Express up to Yulee. I'd be sitting at that table helping you devise whatever strategies we'd implement and actually executing those strategies. While there's only 3 of us sitting at this table, we have 6 folks who are actually going to be part of your team, and I'd let Dino continue talking about that.
Yeah, so Rachel Cohn, who is our managing partner of our Tallahassee office, you're going to meet Rachel later today, I understand, as part of the state team. But we thought it was important to have her on this local team. Her most recent role prior to joining the Southern Group was under the Governor Rick Scott administration, serving as the interim secretary of the DOT for the state of Florida. So she is a fantastic resource, and although we know the focus of this contract is local, where we need that DOT influence or expertise, we would at least make sure to have that resource available to us to support this contract. Also in our office is Kelly Walconis. Kelly is our office administrator, but she also serves in a project coordinator role. So oftentimes, as expressed in your scope of services, there will be a lot of meetings, workshops, things to attend. If it's note-taking and just helping keep us all organized, she'll be a critical role in working with our team. External to the Southern Group, part of our team is Drew Messer of Vineyard Partners. We thought it was important to bring Drew to our team. Not because of his relationships in surrounding counties and with some local officials where we think he can be of help, but his strong focus in technology and in working with the data exchange, not working with you internally, but just watching externally on what some of your priorities are and really following the U2C program and other technical initiatives. We thought he could be a great resource in helping bridge some of the policy and technology to your success. So that's kind of why we brought Drew to the team. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt to talk about the scenario that you all presented to us about the creation of a tax increment financing district.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about TIF financing and how in the future JTA, if it chooses to, might be able to leverage that authority to help with economic development along your bus rapid transit routes, the First Coast Flyer system. So as you can see, basics authorized by Florida's Community Redevelopment Act in 1969. That provides the state statutory authority for local governments to pursue tax increment financing, and that's currently codified and governed under Florida Statutes Chapter 163, Part 3. So CRAs are one of the many different types of special districts the state authorizes local governments to enter into. But we believe that the CRA route is the appropriate one here. And just so you're aware, as of this week, there were 1,747 active special districts throughout the state. Of those 1,747, 223 use tax increment financing, and all 223 of those are CRAs. So let's talk about the basics of, at a high level, how you would go about setting one of these up. It's essentially a 5-step process. And the first part of the process is developing a finding of necessity. So what you would do is work with various planning consultants, working with us, working with your attorneys, to look along the bus rapid transit routes and start to determine where are the key locations that we want to establish this CRA district. And there are really kind of 2 keywords that state statute talks about when it comes to a finding of necessity, and those are the terms slum and blight. But essentially what that means under the definition at the state level is that these areas can have inadequate or outdated infrastructure elements. They can have poorly designed development patterns. They can have declining property values in relation to the city as a whole. And of course, probably most relevant for our purposes today is they can have lacking transportation infrastructure that the local authorities are seeking to improve. So that finding of necessity is really the first step. It is a finding that we, along with you, would submit to the city council and work with the city council. They have to approve that finding of necessity and agree that there is a need to set up a CRA. From there, we would work with you to pass legislation through the city council that would actually establish that redevelopment agency, and that can be done via resolution or by ordinance. Obviously, a big example in Jacksonville of it being done via ordinance would be the DIA, because of all of the structure that was involved there, including the creation of the mayorally appointed board and their different authorities and how they interact with the city to implement their mission. So once the legislation that actually creates and authorizes the CRA is approved, the third step out of the 5 is to work with the community to develop a community redevelopment plan. So the planning guiding document that would outline a direction for the CRA moving forward. And that is also a document that at the end of the day, once it's created, would require city approval through the legislative process. Once that process is completed and the city council has approved it, the mayor has signed it, then the 4th step is to establish the base year from which you will tax rate, and then each year, hopefully as property values increase, that tax increment is the funding source for the CRA. So that base year is established once the CRA is actually in place. And then moving forward, the 5th step, of course, is to actually implement the mission of the CRA and work with the public sector units as well as private sector to spur development along the corridor. So specific to the bus rapid transit system, and as Councilman Clark can attest, obviously there is a sequence to how you roll this out with public sector stakeholders. The first step that we would suggest as part of this plan is before all the decisions are made, we need to start engaging with the core city leadership. So the mayor's office, the city council leadership, your board liaison, Councilmember Newby would be heavily involved in this effort. Other external stakeholders that may not have a direct legal relation to this, but would still be technically helpful. And of course, we'd want their support, or organizations like the North Florida TPO. So that first step would kind of encompass general engagement at the highest levels of the public sector. From there, as we develop the plan, of course, we would approach the district council members who represent the districts along your bus rapid transit routes, and the vast majority, with the exception of, I believe, 3 district council members, have districts along at least one of the 4 lines. Of course, as you can see, Councilman Gaffney has all 4. So as we're moving through that process, of course, the district council members, being responsive to their specific constituencies, are going to want to know what are the plans and how will they impact my district specifically. Do I feel like I can support this to the best of my ability, knowing that my district will benefit and that my constituents are going to be pleased with the plan as presented. So that'll be a highly collaborative process with the district council members as you finalize kind of what the redevelopment plan will look like. And then, of course, shepherding the authorizing legislation and the plan through the city council legislative process, which obviously starts with bill drafting, going through various city council committees. We'd have to assume that it would at least go through the finance committee and the land use and zoning committee, because almost every CRA has a heavy rezoning component to it, which makes a lot of sense as you're looking to spur development along these corridors. There are probably a lot of parcels that need to be looked at and rezoned as part of that. And then once it's done, our work is not yet done, because we need to help you be successful with the CRA that we've worked with you to create. And that's, I think, where a huge value add for our firm comes into play, because we have relationships, whether they're our clients or just our colleagues and various other initiatives that we've been working on. We have the capability to bring people to the table along with you to help you achieve your goals along the CRA boundaries. And just as an example of that, the Florida State College of Jacksonville, they're one of our clients. We do their local government affairs and their state government affairs. Their downtown campus obviously has a huge connection there, being right across the street from the Rosa Parks transit station. And then some of their other branch campuses are nearby the corridors as well. So just as an example, FSCJ is a good, large public sector institution that we would look forward to helping integrate with your planning, so that there are a lot of different stakeholders all pushing in the same direction.
And as Matt mentioned, we also have been following your TOD initiative, and one of which is Rosa Parks. And to that point, we also have in the private sector a lot of actually clients now in the multifamily private equity space that are banging on us hard to find them locations in Jacksonville for multifamily, and they are adamantly focused on looking at some of your TOD sites as well. So that's just an example of partnerships that we help bring together. We've kind of just identified a few of our clients here that you may recognize. These are all active clients. We have active projects going on. And I think we wanted to focus on Motorola. Most of these were included in the submittal as with project descriptions as to the kind of things we're doing. But we wanted to point out Motorola because of all the interagency from the government and private sector cooperation that it took to deploy what's known as the Real-Time Crime Center for the Sheriff's Office. And I'm going to have Matt talk a little bit about the complexity of all those parties and how we were able to bridge them together to deliver a project.
Yeah, so when you guys at JTA think about Motorola, you probably think first and foremost about, okay, radio systems. But the reality for this example is that with Motorola, there was a huge push that we helped them with to stand up what is now the fully functional real-time crime center that Sheriff Williams and his office are using to help combat crime in high crime areas. So that really started, of course, with Motorola and the sheriff. There was a lot of work that went into showing the sheriff the value of these types of initiatives in other places like Detroit, New York City, et cetera, and showing him how, hey, a city like Jacksonville, while not certainly the same scale as a New York City, can still stand up one of these real-time crime centers in the community and start to make an impact. And while it started really with just that public sector agency, of course, it quickly bled over into making sure that the city leadership, including the mayor's office, the city council, were supportive of that. And within the city council, for example, right now we're working with Councilmember Pittman on a specific request she has to deploy more of the technology in her district in some of the high crime areas. So it kind of shows that while it started just with JSO, it really bled to all levels of local government. It also included a lot of private sector enterprises, including Comcast, who, when it comes to the cameras that feed into the Real-Time Crime Center, Comcast is the internet service provider for those cameras. Companies, one of our clients, Siemens, actually built the outdoor boxes that the cameras are housed in and are hung up on JEA's poles. So JEA also was a huge partner with us in this. And then other private sector organizations that you'll recognize can include like Gate Petroleum, for example. They really want to make sure that their gas stations, especially certain ones in certain areas, are safe and secure, and that when their customers arrive, they don't need to worry about any issues at the gas stations. And so that was an example of how we're working with Gate Petroleum to integrate Gate's own security systems into the Real-Time Crime Center so they can start sharing information back and forth with the city and with the sheriff. Also, At the city level, we're talking with Daryl Joseph and the Parks Department about how the Real-Time Crime Center can impact the parks programs that we have in the city, and
there's 15 camera locations within city parks now that are already solving murders, rapes. It's been a very successful program. And when Matt mentioned the Real-Time Crime Center, it's also housed not just at JSO but also at the TPO. So it also coordination with them as partners.
And there's also a state component. We've been working with the mayor's office over the last couple of years to chase down some additional funding from the state to support what the Real-Time Crime Center is doing and expand its operations here in North Florida. So really at all levels of government, at multiple public sector agencies, multiple private sector organizations, this is an example of how it really just started with Motorola and with the Southern Group here locally, and through a lot of hard work, a lot of good relationship building, and good execution of a good idea, it expanded into something that is much bigger now and is going to continue expanding. And we think that's a good example of how we would propose to work with you on something like the BRT CRA, which is going to need a lot of external stakeholder support and coordination at all levels, both in the public sector and in the private sector.
One last thing I just wanted to add was just our belief in being involved in our community and civic responsibility, and just some of the things that each of us are involved in. So I sit on the board for the Nonprofit Center in Jacksonville. I've served on the Planning Commission for 6 years in Jacksonville. I was on the mayor's recent update to the 2030 comp plan, where I heard from Brad Thoburn on y'all's behalf regarding the importance of the TOD, all the TODs and their priorities. Carlo, recently elected as chair of the board of Library Board of Trustees, and Matt, your service on the Waterways Commission and Family Support Services. Just to give you kind of an idea of some of the things that we're involved with outside of just this crazy thing we call lobbying every day. But want to leave time for questions from you guys. But thank you again for your time.
Does anyone want to start? If not, given what you know about the state of affairs with the city council and the various issues that are occurring, what would be your recommendation in terms of timeline if the JTA Board of Directors were interested in moving forward with a CRA model for our bus rapid transit lines? When would you think we should get started and engage with the City Council on that?
I mean, obviously, I think the City Council is always going to have big issues in front of them. I can tell you, if you asked any of them who are elected today if they thought they'd be dealing with some of the issues they're dealing with today, they would say no. If you always wait for the best time, you're gonna wait a while. If there was something directly connected to a funding stream where we have to align with budgets, I can see that being a different conversation. But in terms of when is the right time to start presenting that opportunity, it would be now. Nothing would give me pause to delay.
Okay.
Let me follow up on that. When you were, Matt, when you were talking about the scenario in front of you, first of all, have you, in any of your clients, and not disclosing the clients, or at least statewide, if not any of the other lobbyists, and do you all know, have worked on any project like this before on a TIF?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to disclose the client,
Right.
you just need to.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me personally, not a TIF, but certainly a special district in a couple of ways. One, we work with a client here locally, and happy to share it's Downtown Vision, who you saw on the screen. And as you all know, they are a special district and a municipal service taxing authority downtown. Recently, in the past year, they had to get their overall authorization to continue their special district approved, again, by the City Council. Every 7 years, that comes up for reapproval. And so I worked closely, and so did the rest of the team, with Jake Gordon and his staff, as well as the Mayor's Office and the City Council, to ensure that, one, the city was pleased with the value that the DVI is providing the city. Two, if there were certain modifications that either side wanted to make to the arrangement, for example, the boundaries of the special district, how that would impact property owners downtown, What do we do with the future of the sports complex and all the development that's contemplated there? Do we want to expand out to there? Do we want to expand to Brooklyn? All those kinds of questions. We worked through, some of which were addressed now, some of which are going to be addressed, I think, into the future. So from that standpoint, yes, we've worked on legislation dealing with special districts and a lot of the same types of questions that we would face during the CRA process. And then just as an aside, I'm also on the Community Development District Board for the district on the South Bank, so I was on the board of the special district, so just for what that's worth. But as it relates to the CRA specifically, I have not worked on one in Jacksonville.
So, working on having the experience of the Downtown Vision Special District, and you mentioned the recent one about DIA, well, not recent, a couple of years ago. Have you identified a couple of what were the common issues or troubles in any of those, and how would you handle them if representing us?
Yeah, so I think the challenges for a BRT CRA would be a little different than DVI, but probably the biggest thing that I could see in this, we all saw this play out during the discussions about the Downtown Investment Authority, is how much authority is the city willing to pass along to a newly created agency. You all remember when DIA was being created, there was the back and forth over how much autonomy do we give them versus how much do we retain for ourselves? At what threshold of dollar spends, incentive agreements will we require the authority to come back to the city council for approval on various things? That's going to be, I think, probably the central question as it relates to you all and your CRA ideas. And I think a lot of that are things that can be addressed during the stakeholder process where we're trying to build support initially and making sure that everyone's aligned with the vision, the end goals of what the program will look like. And certainly, I think you can't expect to get everything you want out of it, but our goal is to get you and help you get as much authority as possible that can stay within JTA and within your CRA that we can with the City Council, and giving them enough confidence based on JTA's track record of good fiscal management and your track record of providing good solutions to the community in general with transportation, to give them the confidence that they don't need the CRA to come back to them every time they want to undertake a project, that they can give you the autonomy that you all will need to implement your vision effectively and efficiently.
And I would say in spending time with each of those district council members, they've got to be a champion for you in each of their districts along all the corridors. And as Matt mentioned, 16 of the 19. I mean, you need them all. So if we can help them identify with projects and connect with stakeholders in their districts where they can be successful and deliver for their constituents, that's a critical role. So we've got to spend the quality time with the council members.
Well, and you mentioned, and just on the record, we are a state agency and an independent special district ourselves in terms of the way that we're situated in our enabling legislation. With you being a member of the South Bank board, how would you navigate the fact that in our case, what line would that be? Would be the red line would basically be cutting into the tax increment that would be occurring, that you'd be getting from the North Bank or the South Bank. So how would you deal with that, both representing us and the fact that you have a fiduciary responsibility to that particular board, and then give us the best advice with respect to the council members and the DIA and others who would be interested in maintaining and retaining as much of that tax increment for them versus transit infrastructure?
Sure. So I would say, first of all, as it relates to the district on the South Bank, the South Bank CRA and the funds from it that will be funding the public infrastructure over on that parcel, on those parcels, has already been approved. It's very unlikely that anybody would seek to come back to council to open up that deal and start it over. And the Community Development District, which is the board that I sit on for that, we have our own taxing authority for the property owners and developers and the residents that will ultimately live there. So from that standpoint, there won't be a competition over funding. Each will have its own dedicated funding source. If there were a scenario where the BRT line over on the South Bank had an impact on the district on the South Bank that would be perceived as a conflict, then in that scenario, I would recuse myself from any votes on the CDD's behalf and work on your behalf, understanding that what we're fighting for here is the big picture of the BRT CRA.
Any other questions or? Oops. All right, well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.